Welcome. Okay. No. Good morning. Welcome to the ICB board meeting on the 6th of March. This is the meeting in public. Just a reminder that as it's a meeting in public, it's an opportunity for the public to see us doing our business in an open and transparent way. It is not a public meeting, so we don't invite questions from the public unless we submit questions in advance. And today we have had a question from a member of the public, so we'll get to that later by the end of the meeting. Can I also remind those of you who are on virtually to, if you need to take calls or anything, please can you switch your camera off and do that, because we are being live streamed and it just looks a bit strange when people are watching it back. So if you could do that. Also a reminder to everybody in the room that the microphone is sensitive. So if you need to whisper, just be aware it might not be a whisper when it comes up on the live stream later. So just to think about that. What was nice for me actually before we started was seeing on my left hand side various arrays of yellow and greens, which reminds me that we've headed into spring. And although when I was driving in this morning it was very foggy, I am hopeful, looking out the window, that we will get some sun today to remind us that we are probably not officially, but we've passed the 1st of March, which also means that we're about to come to the end of the financial and operational year for 24-25. And we will, of course, get into some of that detail later on as we go through the various reports. But it also means that we are fast heading into the next operating year, which will be 25-26. And again, there's lots of activity going on in relation to that, and we'll get some updates on that. Before I move forward with the agenda, can I just give apologies? The first is Matthew Bryant as the Chief Exec for Dorset Healthcare, but Nick Johnson is here in the room for me, so welcome, Nick. Cecilia Bufton as the ICP Chair. Today also would have been Cecilia's last meeting because she stands down as ICP Chair at the end of this month. So I do want to formally record our thanks to her for the time that she has put in initially to the ICB, because she was a non-executive on the ICB, and then she's been the chair of the ICB for the last 2 years. So if you could record our thanks to Cecilia. Apologies also from Charlotte Green, Chair of the Governance Board for the Dorset Voluntary Community Sector Association, or Alliance even. Dawn Harvey, the ICB Chief People Officer, but we've got Emma Shipton here for her. Welcome, Shipton. Keith Falf, who's a participant member, as the Pro Vice Chancellor for the Education and Quality of Bournemouth University. John Price is here in place of Matt Prosser, who has now, as you know, we have the acting Chief Executive of Dorset Council, Sam, here. Thank you.
I can't make it today, so
That's fine. Perfect. Looks like we're in good hands with you there, Sam. And then we've got apologies from Dean Spencer, the ICB Chief Operating Officer, and we have Sue Sutton here for him. So welcome, Sue. Can I also welcome Adrian White, who's the new non-executive director for the ICB. This is Adrian's first meeting. Adrian, I will ask you to just say hello and just give anything brief that you want to about you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I'm Adrian White, delighted to be joining the ICB board. I've got 3 pages of acronyms already written down, but please be gentle with me today. But look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Well, a big welcome to you. Rachel Pearce, who's the Southwest Regional link for us on the ICB, will join us. She'll be joining later at 11 o'clock, but I think she will join us on screen. And welcome to everybody that's on screen with us today. I know others will join as well as we go through today. Okay, are there any declarations of interest before we proceed? If anything comes up as we go through, please let us know. Otherwise, previously declared. Good morning, Paula. Morning. Right, we're going to do minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 16th of January. So I'm going to walk us through the pages. So if you can start with page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll take those as an accurate record of the last meeting. Moving forward then to the actions, all of the actions have been completed and it's proposed to that they be removed. The various owners to them, the updates are on the action log, but I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to silence as no, so thank you very much for that. We've got various things on the agenda today, but only one topic for decision, which we will get to later. But before we proceed on any of that, we're going to go to our board story. And David, are you going to be?
Yes, I'll do a quick introduction, then I'll hand over to colleagues. So thank you everybody for this opportunity to bring this story forward. So the last few board meetings, we've tried to cover a citizen's story that's related to one of the 4 strategic accountabilities of the ICB. And today we're digging into the social and economic development responsibilities that we have. And it seems apposite, I think, to look at the Get Britain Working policy drive that's been emerging over the last few weeks, because it's such a critical part of everything that we do. The focus of the Get Britain Working drive is on healthier lives leading to economic growth, and the role of the NHS in supporting employers, in supporting employees, and indeed our own workforce is significant in this area. So we're about to hear from Rose, who is an amazing young lady who has struggled to stay in work because of ill health. And we're going to hear about what made it so difficult for her, but also with a bit of optimism, what helped in the end. And whilst it's possible, what Rose's story demonstrates that it's possible for people to get work help today, but Rose's story also tells us it relies on luck, determination, and the beneficence of employers. And that's not the norm that we want to see. So we have to work more to make these things happen better. So that's why Get Britain Working matters, and for us as a system in Dorset, but also for us as the NHS in Dorset. And after hearing Rose's story, we'll also hear from Sarah and Rebecca, who are leading some pan-Dorset work in relation to the Get Britain Working policy drive. And so the ask for the board today is to obviously consider, hear about the stories and think about what this means for Dorset, and to help steer the ongoing Get Britain Working development work, too many works there, to make sure that we're covering the right bases, and we play our part in supporting that and helping shape it. So we're not asking to define or agree that work today, merely to sort of start our discussions and contributions to it. So on that basis, shall we hand over to Rose, actually? It will get us going, and then we'll pass to Rebecca and Sarah.
Thank you. You might be able to hear online, but we can't hear here, so just bear with us. Just on to the side.
Hiya, I'm Rose Dunsby. I'm a peer specialist at the Dorset Mental Health Forum. I have lived experience of Hiya, I'm Rose Dunsby. I'm a peer specialist at the Dorset Mental Health Forum. I have lived experience of bipolar and I have lived experience of psychosis. So when I first came out of hospital 4 years ago, I wanted to get straight back into work. I was like so eager to work again, and then I luckily got employed. Like I was this employee before, so I went back, and it was great at the beginning. I was working normally, and then I started to get bullied. It just went downhill from there, really. Because of my mental health, because I was on medication, they would take the mick out of me, bully me because of it, because I was quite slow. It got progressively worse until the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. So I raised it with the manager probably the first couple of months it was happening, and they said please don't take it any further. And then I just naively didn't, because I was still kind of in a bit of a recovery state. The particular managers that were on, like the roles of the managers at this supermarket, they weren't very compassionate about mental health. And when they would say, like one particular manager that was my manager, he said he suffered with his own mental health, but he didn't actually use that lived experience to help others. The EIS team got me involved with the careers advice, and they helped me out with getting a job with the Dorset Mental Health Forum. My manager Paul, he would have over the course of 6 months have meetings with me, prepared me for the role so that it wasn't like a shock, because it is quite a big role to take, going into psychiatric wards and in the community as well. I was doing the 2 jobs, and then I finally quit, and it was just like a huge relief. And then, yeah, I've just been happily at the forum ever since. It's great. Like we have supervision like as much as we need, so I could go 3 months without supervision, so it's like 3 months period. I think that's the maximum that my manager will go without talking to me one-on-one. And then it can be up to like almost every day, like a text message, email, call, like just checking in, like whether if I'm struggling or not. Like if I'm particularly struggling at that point of time, then my manager will be calling me up almost every day. Well, every day, yeah. So it's just like, it's so much support, and like it's not just from my manager, it's from other colleagues, and it's just the whole team. I think flexibility, I think that's the key word I would say, because for me that's what's like changed my whole outlook on work. So it's mainly like on phone calls, just saying like, who would you want to be employed by? And I was instantly like, Dorset Mental Health Forum, because I'd heard about it, and I was just like, I want to be a peer. And that was what I wanted to do from the moment I got out of hospital, because I heard about it through EIS. They would, like, as soon as I came out of hospital, I was talking about jobs. They were like, the Dorset Mental Health Forum would be great. We had this wellbeing at work plan between my manager and me from the forum for 6 months. It was probably once every 2 months we had a Teams call, and then that was preparing us for the actual start date. And in those Teams calls, we'd be discussing like my lived experience and how that's affected me and how I can recover, not recover, but how I'm recovering, and how this job would be better for me, like all sorts of things we talked about. When I've been at the forum for a year and a couple of months now, and it's just like, I would say, we say in the Discovery Project, which is the project I'm in at the forum, that like recovery is ongoing and it's not linear. So like I will always probably live with my mental health problem, not problem but illness, bipolar, but I will always be striving for something better for myself, and I think that pledge to yourself is the main thing. So, and that's what we live by and work by with the forum.
Ask Sarah and Rebecca to take us through the slides.
Hi, my name's Sarah Rice. I'm the Head of Service for Skills and Learning, Adult Community Education. We're the shared adult learning service for BCP Council and Dorset Council. And Rebecca, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Rebecca Davis. I work for Dorset Local Enterprise Partnership at the moment.
Okay. And around this subject of Get Britain Working and Connect to Work, we have pulled together a slide deck for you. There's a lot of slides in there. Please don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of them today, but there's some useful information in there that may be helpful for you to understand the local plans and what's going to be happening, and the board's opportunity to be involved in this, and for sharing and making sure that everybody who needs to know does know about the arrangements locally. So yeah, the slide deck is quite large. Please do take a look through in your own time. I'm going to whiz through a few of the slides here and pull out a few key points for you, but please do take a look in your own time. So the Get Britain Working white paper was released at the end of last year, and there's more information coming out all the time. There was a paper this week that's gone out to local authorities, and really the whole drive is about tackling economic inactivity and work towards the long-term ambition of an 80% employment rate. So the paper is backed with some investment, and really what it's doing is pushing out decision making and planning to local areas through local authorities initially, but involving a wider set of organisations to really make those plans work for the local area. So we've got some information on these slides about why and some of the background, but the important thing I think for today is about the local Get Britain Working plans. So this is going to look at local labour market challenges and how local areas are going to tackle those challenges. And it needs to be done alongside other local strategies and plans, so local growth plans, the local skills improvement plans, and the work of the integrated care board. So really the idea is to bring stakeholders together to ensure a unified understanding of local priorities and challenges and what services and organisations are currently doing to address these. And local areas must draw from across the local system and find out what's already happening, what's already working, extend and expand the things that are working rather than duplicate. So really is kind of localism in action. Recognising the scale of the challenge that ill health poses as a contributor to rising economic inactivity, the support of health leadership will also be crucial to local Get Britain Working plans. And integrated care partnerships will offer a key leadership forum for the accountable body to engage with health and social care stakeholders at the system level. So we need to ensure there's alignment with integrated care board and local skills improvement plan geographies. So this for locally, this will be Dorset Council and BCP Council together. And we also need to have the local plans once designed, they need to be jointly agreed by members of the partnership and need to include sign off from Integrated Care Board, Job Centre Plus representatives and any other significant involved parties.
Sarah,
So,
sorry,
yes.
but I don't think your slides are moving on.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
You might want to put it on the present mode as well. Just
yes, sorry, I thought I was. Apologies. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, I might need to stop sharing and start again. So you're not seeing it as a slideshow at all at the moment?
No.
Are you just seeing my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies. Right. No, that's still not working for you, is it? It's
You can't-
showing on my screen. Apologies.
So you might just have to move it on.
Yeah, okay.
Although we can't really see it here, so I don't know.
No,
if
you can't, no. Oh, that's, sorry, really strange. Okay, I might just carry on talking for a minute while I try and
that's fine.
work out how to get that. Do you have access to the slide deck independently? Have you got copies there, or?
No, it didn't come through.
No, okay, all right. I'll make sure that they get through to everyone. Okay, so we did have some data to share with you that Rebecca was just going to talk through on the local picture. But if it's not moving on.
We can certainly give the impression of what the data is, though, and you can see it afterwards, I guess.
Yeah.
So in terms of the data I just wanted to pull out, which is backing this particular government policy, they've looked at what the employment and unemployment rate is, but also what the inactivity rate is. And I'm sharing the information here that is the Dorset, that's Pan Dorset area of unemployment, but also employment, and then economically inactive. And if you see, we are really well employed in Dorset. And compared to nationally, we are 2 or 3% higher generally on the employment side, and 2 or 3% lower. Sorry, not 2 or 3%, but a percentage lower on unemployment. But for the economically inactive figure, we are stubbornly at around 20% of our workforce who are currently not working. And if we could move to the next slide, Sarah. I've divided that out so that you can see the reasons as to why people are currently saying that they are economically inactive. I have to give a caveat to this slide in the fact that this is actually survey data that is collected by ONS on why people are economically inactive. The last survey, only 11% of people sent the survey responded. So this is multiplied up on the basis of an 11% return. So there is a caveat around it, but it is a useful figure for us to look at. And it's split two ways here. One is to look at the reason for that unemployment, inactivity. And when I say they're inactive, they're not currently claiming unemployment benefit. They may well be claiming sick benefit or other benefits to support life, but they're not claiming unemployment. So they're considered not ready for work, this particular group, or not looking for work. But then I've split it by age in the other sector here. And that's where you draw out a huge amount that actually the over 50s locally are the predominant factor in our inactivity in Dorset, economic inactivity in Dorset. This doesn't mean people are maybe sat around not wanting to work and just having a great time or not able to contribute. Huge numbers of our volunteer activities, including from boards through to helping with food banks, are sat in this sector. People are able to give their time back, but we could look much more with Get Britain Working, helping those people find routes to employment as well as their volunteering, and particularly those that are struggling with mental health, like we've just heard from Rose, how we help those people into the workforce. Sarah.
Lovely, thank you. There's a couple of other data slides on there that you'll be able to look at, but part of the proposed action and change then is some scaling up and deepening of contributions of the NHS and wider health systems. Now, some of these have been trialled in certain areas, so it may not, some of the plans may not apply to this particular local area. But there are things elsewhere that are happening to improve the picture. So when you do get chance, have a look through some of these other slides about some things around the ICS accelerators as well, some more information about what's happening locally. And so as part of this now then, we are looking at that local picture, and Skills and Learning as the shared adult learning service for Dorset Council and BCP Council is already in a position to take forward some of the proposed actions from Get Britain Working. And one of the strands of work is Connect to Work, which is a supported employment programme. Because of the geography that Skills and Learning already cover, and because of working across both the councils, it's been identified that we can take a lead in this piece of work to get the Connect to Work programme up and running. So this is a strand of the Get Britain Working paper, and it's a key plank in that paper, and it's primarily to help disabled people with health conditions, and those with more complex barriers to work who are currently outside of the labour market. So this is really to do with hidden unemployment, and anything that can be done to support people back into the workplace. One of the key factors as well, a bit like as Rose was talking about, it's about the support once that person's in work as well, to prevent them falling back out of work, or there may already be people in the local area who are in work who are at risk of falling out of work. So Connect to Work will be a programme that provides support for pre-employment, but also once on employment. There's a few other bits of information in the slide deck that you can take a look at. Participant eligibility is wide, and there are various other target groups within the local area. I have popped some information in there about grant guidance. It's probably not relevant for the board to be aware of. And I've also put in some slides from DWP about the delivery approach for Connect to Work, the accountable bodies, and how this is all working. So Dorset Council is the accountable body for this piece of work, but the plans need to include BCP Council area as well. And the funding will be channeled through Dorset Council. Needs to include the contributions of the health boards and other partners to make this whole project work. It's not expected that all accountable bodies will go live at the same time, so it's a phased approach. Locally, there are some initial plans to hopefully go live with some delivery in the autumn. So that's the plan at the moment, if everything goes according to plan. There's two types of supported employment model that will be covered within this programme, and some of the individual placement and support type work is already happening within the NHS and primary care. There are schemes already happening. So really one of the aims in the early stages of Connect to Work is to identify all the good practice that's already happening, who's already delivering in this field, what kind of support is out there, and making sure that that becomes part of the overall plan. And then there's some more detailed guidance on supported employment quality frameworks as well that I've included for anyone who may be interested in seeing a bit more about that. So yes, locally then we've got support from DWP. They've identified a regional engagement lead for us. They are providing an awful lot of support at the moment, lots of webinars, lots of things that we can access and share to get the programme up to speed. And locally then we are expecting that there will be a commissioning approach with identifying some other providers who are already delivering in this field and looking at contracting with them. So at the moment then the next steps for Connect to Work is to map that local existing provision, identify what's already out there, what's happening, what can be built on. We do need to appoint a governing board for the Connect to Work activity and the Get Britain Working activity as well, actually. It's really important to include the voice of potential participants. So it was really lovely meeting Rose and a couple of other local people last week and hearing their stories and it's really important to know what they want employers to know before we start identifying potential employers to work with. We are looking to go out for expressions of interest for delivery partners for this programme and looking at the referral routes and links with health and the way that we're going to identify the participants for the programme. Employer engagement is going to be a challenge. We are going to have to identify employers who have got support in the workplace, who are prepared to be flexible with their approach to recruitment and then supporting employees to come into the workplace. And the Connect to Work programme will continue to support participants once they get into work, and that support can continue for anything up to a year, and that can include in-work support, actually going into the workplace and supporting in the workplace, or it can be remote support. There's a range of things that can be offered to help keep people in work once they do secure that employment. We do need to submit the delivery plan to DWP, and that needs to happen quite soon. So those plans are being worked up at the moment, and then looking at some training and recruitment of delivery staff for both the local authorities to make sure those areas are covered. And the actual official procurement also needs to happen. I am going to stop sharing now because it's a bit disconcerting not being able to see anyone. And apologies that the slideshow didn't work there and probably didn't look great on a live stream for anyone who's joining that way. So apologies for that. We can take some questions now, or I don't know if there's a plan to have questions at a later stage, or anything that wasn't clear from any of the slides that were shared.
David, I'm assuming we're going to questions. Are we?
Yeah, just make one.
Yeah, of course.
Around, I should have introduced Sarah Howard, who will be known to many of you, but Sarah is one of our leads for place development and is the lead for social mobility work across the Dorset area, and so has helped bring this story to us today and will help take out the issues and suggestions and ideas. So sorry, Sarah, I should have introduced you earlier.
No problem. Do you want to add anything, Sarah, before we get into
well, just before we get into the discussion, we did chat to 3 individuals, and I think the other 2 stories would be worth sharing as well, you know, obviously after the meeting. But one young person has epilepsy and seizures and can't drive, and quite a compelling, she's also a care leaver, a really compelling story about the barriers she experienced as a care leaver, but equally the support that she is getting from Dorset Council to help her into work. And the other lady that we spoke to was a lady that had physical disabilities, and after a number of years managed to get some support from a charity, and now can work actually from her bed with the screen across her bed, and she runs her own business. And again, quite a compelling story in terms of the support that she's received, both from health services and from the charity. So I think it's, you know, worth getting a breadth of different stories to tell the story about what supports it.
Thank you very much. And if you send those in, I'm sure the team will circulate it across to have a look. So let's move to questions and comments then. Rhiannon and then Lisa.
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't pick up in the presentation, and it may be there. The benefits of socio-economic benefits completely were there strongly, but good work, and I'm emphasising good work, and the benefits to health outcomes is significant. The evidence supports that. So I just wondered if that's there in the context of this. And the other thing I wondered about, listening to Rose's story, which was quite heart-wrenching in terms of her experience of bullying in the workplace, and you made reference to working with providers that are already got supporting mechanisms in place. I just wondered if there was any work going on to really influence the cultures within the business sector particularly, to shift the dial, I guess, in terms of workplace culture, which clearly is a barrier for people in the workplace. Listening to the two stories, potentially the other one that you mentioned, not that we've heard it, but certainly Rose's story, because we want to change that, don't we? We don't want people to have to only end up in public sector environments.
Absolutely, and the focus on good work, good quality work, is very much a feature of the Connect to Work programme. It moves away from the traditional models that are currently in place, which is about preparing people to apply for work and then kind of accepting that any work is going to be suitable in those situations. And then once they start work, that support ends. So it is a move away from what has been happening. There's a fidelity model behind this as well. So we're really looking at a good quality supported employment programme as part of the Connect to Work activity. And some of that will certainly involve supporting employers, improving them to, or supporting them to become disability confident employers. I think it is going to be a challenge locally because we know the high number of SMEs in the area, and they may be great for this piece of work, but appreciate that they may not have the capacity for taking on people. This does need to be about real paid proper employment. This is not about work placements. It's not supported internships. It is real proper good quality, good jobs, and matching up the people who need those jobs with the employers who need the applicants. So I see definitely it is going to be providing that support to employers. We've just got to find some of them first. And as you say, not just kind of public sector employers either. It needs to extend beyond that. Rebecca, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just briefly on public sector, because in Dorset, we do rely heavily on public sector jobs. I think of a workforce of around 370,000 people, about 50,000 are paid for somehow by public sector. And I think the public sector has a really big role in showing what's possible to other businesses. And actually, there is a potential with this programme to really take the lead there, not just the NHS, but all public sector roles, to then show other businesses what's possible, help people feel that they have achieved in one role and therefore they can move on to other roles, just as many of us would, apply for a new job at a different style of company.
Yeah, really good point. Did you want to say anything about the cultural piece that Rhiannon raised?
I don't. I'm not particularly aware of cultural work in SMEs. I know there's a huge will and desire to do that, but I think at the moment, my feeling, and coming through the Growth Hub work that we deliver, is that businesses and SMEs in particular feel very pushed at the moment on a monetary side, particularly with the changes to national insurance and tax rises or rises in costs, and that whilst yes, people want to make cultural differences in certain sectors, other sectors are finding it very difficult to do that.
Okay, so we've got more hands. We've got Lisa, Emma, then Dan.
Thanks, Jenny. I want just to touch on success measures. So how do we know that this is working, and how do we know that we're making a dent in the problem? And those stats around economic inactivity feel like a really blunt instrument to me, because they're really high level, and sometimes economic activity isn't a bad thing. It's through choice rather than necessity or being excluded from a workplace. So I guess I want to know a little bit more about how are you getting underneath that blunt instrument so that we really understand where the problem is, and we have statistics that we can use as a baseline that really get to the heart of the problem, and we can make sure that we are focusing our resources in the areas where you have people like Rose who really want to be out there and economically active but can't be, versus somebody, for example, like my husband, who is choosing to be economically inactive and doesn't really want to be put into a job.
Yes.
You do know that.
I do know that. It's fine, don't worry. And I guess it's that kind of how do we point our resources in the right way, and more at Rose than than other people.
My husband will never forgive you. I'll go to Emma and Dan, and then if you want to come back, just to spare Lisa's blushes also. So.
And hi Rebecca, hi Sarah. I know that you've been working with members of the team around the work that we're trying to do across the ICS to get smarter at our widening participation offer. So it's been really timely to kind of hear the bigger picture stuff today. And I guess for other colleagues around the room, actually it's really timely because we are developing those plans and we're intending to bring our detailed plan to SEG and via PEC. But I think up until hearing this conversation today, I hadn't really appreciated, actually, it isn't just about us increasing the amount of good jobs there are for our local people in the public sector. We've probably still got more to do around the culture of the jobs that we offer. And obviously we've got a focus on equality, delivery system stuff later. So it's a far bigger, I'll use the word opportunity. I won't use the word challenge, although notwithstanding it's going to be challenging around doing that. And I really like the challenge that's come up about actually we should also be role modelling for other employers. So I think that's a good opportunity. And I take your point as well, Lisa, about the measures, because the measures aren't just the numbers. It's absolutely about the quality of what we can offer as well and sustainability. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks. Mine was a build on kind of Rhiannon's. I can't remember if it was your first part or your second part, but I guess the macro benefits. So I guess I'm thinking about the longevity of the grant. This government's really going to be interested in economic growth. And so thinking about economic growth, employment, population health, and what thinking there is about how we demonstrate that through the grants. Because this feels like a real shift in prevention and long-term spending to get some of those benefits. It's really hard to measure those benefits at a macro level. And so just interested in where your thinking was up to. Thank you.
Okay, John.
Okay.
Can I come back on the blunt tool of the data, the economic inactivity? It is a blunt tool. There isn't, there's no excuses. It's what government have used to cite that there is a workforce or an available group of people who could be working should they want to. And their even blunter tool of a statistic from a government perspective is that 20% of those 100,000 people in Dorset that are not currently working do actually want a job. They just can't find a route in there. So I think they're trying to narrow it to the right people. The challenge is they don't actually have the details of who these people are. So it's trying to find those people that really want a job, how we help them into the workforce, and hopefully aligning them to this programme in a part. But yes, ideally not spending lots of money on finding people who are making a contribution or choosing to do something different at whatever stage in their career. I don't know whether that helps. I think it's generated another question, actually.
The Connect to Work programme itself is a voluntary programme, so it's not going to be mandated. It's not even going to be referrals from Job Centre Plus. They can signpost people to the programme, but it is a voluntary programme and it is really focusing on the economically inactive, but we do all know, especially in the area of the country we live in, that a lot of that is through choice. So that is going to be one of the big challenges of developing the programme. It's recognised that we're not going to find these people straight away, and so as part of the delivery plan that gets submitted to DWP, we kind of need to show how that is going to happen locally and when we expect to reach peak volumes. So we've been given it's not even really a target. I won't call it a target. We've been given a number of 900 people across 900 people a year, that is, across Dorset and BCP area. But that would be at kind of peak capacity. So if in the process of putting together delivery plans, we feel actually we're not going to attract 900 people. They're not out there and there aren't 900 jobs either to support them a year, then we need to reflect that in the delivery plans and perhaps be a bit more realistic about where we think the problem really is and what can be put in place there. the first year in particular is probably going to have nothing like those numbers coming through, and we'll be looking at those the signposting and referral routes, and possibly some of the early activity maybe around keeping people already employed in employment rather than them dropping out of the workplace. So that might be the kind of activity that can start early on in the programme, before we reach peak numbers. Longevity, it is at the moment, it's a plan up to 2030. The funding is in place in theory until about 2028. Obviously depends on future elections as well. But the whole idea of making this very localised is that it does build something that a local system can then potentially sustain in the future. So it shouldn't be a short term. It's not a project. It's not even just a programme for now. It should be about a longer term local commitment to supporting people and supporting employers. So it's definitely not seen as a short term thing. And some of the data around how it's going to be monitored and how we'll know success, DWP have listed kind of what they need to know. So there's some things that are being worked through there and how they will deem that something's been successful. But again, locally, we need to decide what those success factors are for us and what we would hope to be getting out of this.
We've got 3 more hands. I'm going to take them and then we're going to move on from there. So I've got Rob, Sam, and then Nick Johnson.
Yeah, thanks. So something's been covered. So it's probably taking some of what Lisa was talking about. There's something about the here and now and addressing the problem we've got now, and there's a lovely blunt tall target there of 900, isn't there? Perfect. What does that actually mean? The bit that I was sort of drawn to, and I acknowledge that the response rate wasn't great, so be careful with, lies, down lies and statistics, but the chart on the right was the age group. So I'm not going to say what I will say. Obviously, the 16 to 19 might be more likely to be economically inactive if still in education, but it'd be interesting to know that. But for me, having going through the university process, you go to universities and you hear the employment statistics per university, but it doesn't relate back to where you came from, does it? It's where you go after the university. So it depends on how much this is like a macro problem, or are you trying to get ahead of the curve? So if you took the younger cohort, because there was quite a few people in the 20 to 24 that were economically inactive house. Yeah. So if you're a Dorset young person, you go off to university, number one, do you come back to Dorset? If you do come back to Dorset, are you more likely to end up in that orange segment or not? Then you can start thinking about, well, if we're going out to employers, there's the people who need help in employment, but that's segmented all over the place, isn't it? And you might have quicker wins on some things if you're targeting, I don't know, maybe apprenticeships or something versus some other kind of support. So I guess it's that bit. I think that's the point you're at. It's just we've got this big issue that we're trying to solve, and we kind of looking at how we do that. But so there's no question. I think I'm just talking, to be honest. But
the programme will be 18 plus, so it won't really touch on the 16 to 18, but it is a progression pathway potentially. It's something that should be built into conversations early on, that support is there, especially for young people with disabilities and mental ill health, that they know that this programme will be available to provide that support, but it's very much 18 plus, and then up to wherever really.
Sarah, can I come in on
sorry,
that?
yeah, go on. Yeah.
There is, I'm sure you'll all be aware of the EHCP and the number of young people that are struggling.
Sorry.
Thank you. That worked. Sorry, can I just bring in the other two?
So sorry.
Because otherwise it's going to take quite a while for us to get through. So let's bring them in and then you can come back on both of them. So Sam and then Nick.
Thank you very much, Chair. So Sam Crowe, Interim Chief Executive of Dorset Council, formerly Director of Public Health. I guess I was sitting here thinking, at government level, this is a really welcome mission, but it's also really complex. And one of the risks is that as this falls, because it's naturally cross-governmental and it involves lots of different departments, there's going to be lots and lots of schemes and grants that come out and meet all of our organisations at a local level. So without trying to solve it today, I do think we need a conversation about how do we hold this at ICP level. And Dan made a really good point that the pursuit of economic growth through local authority growth plans has to absolutely go hand in glove with the work on inequalities, because there's no point in having growth without making sure that we're targeting the right groups that don't experience those opportunities. So there's lots of work happening in both councils around social mobility, and this is an opportunity in our system to try to join some of it up. I'm already behind on the number of schemes that are coming through, and I was noting you talked about the IPS model. There's drug and alcohol money already coming to councils for an IPS scheme that's specifically about people who've struggled with addiction and getting them back into the workplace. And I'm sure lots of partners also have awareness of similar schemes. So as we start to think about refreshing NHS Joint Forward Plan, we've got a new council plan, the Dorset Council. We're thinking about the next phase of development for the Integrated Care Partnership. If we could understand what sits at what level and where's the best place to have that focus on making sure this joins up and tracks back to some of those outcomes, that would be really, really helpful. Thank you.
Really helpful, thank you. And Nick?
Yeah, hi. So Nick Johnson, Dorset County Hospital and Dorset Healthcare. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's a really important agenda, some really powerful stories. The work of the Mental Health Forum, who we work really closely with at Dorset Healthcare, I think is really fantastic. So it's great to see that coming through. I was going to make a similar point to Sam, and my suggestion on joining up was potentially, is this a role for place-based partnerships? It seems like kind of a really good thing for them to get their teeth stuck into. The other 2 points that I was going to make, just very briefly, really glad to hear about the mapping. Dorset Healthcare, I think, have already got a number of these types of services. So I think making those connections, I think, is going to be really, really important. And likewise, sort of recognising your point around delivery plans and I think employment support advisors, can't remember what you called them, connecting into primary and community care. And I was thinking, how do you connect in effectively to such a sort of a fragmented system? And actually, I think one of the answers to that potentially is integrated neighbourhood teams. It's a really good example of how actually, if we're much more integrated at primary and community level, we can work more effectively together. And I'd be really keen, Sarah, just to sort of catch up and have a conversation about how we might do that.
Absolutely, yes. It's one of the reasons for coming today to present today is there are lots of things already happening and lots of people who need to be involved, and I want to be sure that we're not missing anything, but the broader Get Britain working plans do need to sit, well, they need to sit outside of skills and learning. We can certainly take a lead on the Connect to Work programme as part of that, but those broader Get Britain working plans, they've got to be published by July. By the way, Sam, I don't know if that's one to be aware of. It's really not that long, and it needs to pull in all the various things. So there should have been some guidance documents come out to Dorset and BCP this week. If you haven't got those, then I've got the right contact to make sure that you do get those papers out. But yeah, it does need to be a much larger network approach to all of this.
Great. So can I thank you both for coming and presenting. Again, you can see from the level of interaction that this is an area that people are interested in. I think Sam's point about where this sits and the join is really important, certainly for us as an ICB, because that's, we need to think in a way that will enable this to really get traction and get moving. So it does feel to me that this, the discussion and the joining, including thinking about things like place-based partnerships, is probably better done at the ICP level. Nick Island, you're here as one of the incoming chairs of the ICP from April. So if we can ask you to kind of just take that forward as part of the plans for the ICP, that would be really helpful. And then I think there were a range of things that were being discussed. I think one of the important things for me was the strength of how this is actually everybody's business. So you talked about the local government, you talked about the BCSE, we've talked about public sector, we've talked about private sector. I could go on, but you know, it is everybody's business. So, so if we're going to make headways in that, then we need to be thinking collectively. And then the last thing that I wanted to reflect from the discussion that we had was the important role that the public sector can play as anchor institutions, both not just in terms of providing jobs, but also modelling some of the behaviours, particularly around things like culture that we talked about. So thank you very much. Good luck with meeting the tight timescales, and of course you'll stay engaged with the various organisations, people around the table.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and apologies the presentation didn't play properly, but hopefully you can flick through at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay.
Bye.
Move on. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Sarah. We're going to move on to the board assurance framework. The board will be aware that we're still to do the development session on that, and I think that has been scheduled for April. So to come in, but we are still using the BAF, the assurance framework, as we conduct our business. So I'll hand over to David to give us the update. You've of course got the full update in the pack anyway.
Yeah, sure. You've actually stolen my entire thunder. My notes on there. So the board assurance framework is here for approval. The risks and updates contained within the details being considered and discussed at the subcommittees. And I'm just worth amplifying that members will recall that there have ongoing development work around the board assurance framework based on our discussions over recent meetings, and we have confirmed that there's some time at the board development session on the 3rd of April where we'll go through the model and in particular look at the strategic objectives and strategic risks that then can be used to further evolve our board assurance framework. So for now, we've agreed to maintain the current board assurance framework because it's still helping us have the right conversations and consider our core responsibilities. And by way of example, there's one of the risks in there around social mobility, and the discussion we've just had points to the work that's ongoing all the time to try and address those challenges and opportunities. So it's a really live document. It's really important we maintain something while we continue that development work. So what you got here is the latest iteration. I said it's been through the subcommittee, so I wasn't proposing to go into any further detail on it, but of course myself and other chief officers can help answer any questions if there are any on our specific risk areas.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the back? Move on.
I do reflect we've come on such a journey over the last few years with the BAF, and it is such a better document. I think it feels much more live and present in what we're grappling with. There is just something around factual accuracy, around the areas to note. It says Beverly Bryant has been approved to expand her role as CDIO by across the Dorset providers. I would say that both Beverly and Nick have been working on a sort of proposal which is absolutely looking at the digital sort of leadership and how we work together in quite a different way across Dorset. And we're just in the process of landing that across our organisations. So it was a little bit preemptive, but it's really a good direction of travel. And moving in the right way. But I think, Nick, you'd agree, we're not quite there, but we've got a model that seems to be moving forward.
Do you want to add anything?
Yes, direction of intent subject to final approval. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
I really agree with Siobhan. I guess my question is, do we set ourselves a date for the reset? Because we've talked about it a lot, and have we got a date in mind as a board? And should we have that formally just so we get it done? Because it is, the amount of work that's gone on is great, but when are we going to get to the next maturity version?
You want to?
Yeah. So we'll bring it to the next formal board. So we've got the development session on the 3rd of April, and then by the time we can go to board, we'll have a revised format discussion. Because of the way things will fall, it might be that we have it, push it through the committees and get it to the board in. But we had planned to have that discussion session in February, but we moved it in order to have the discussion about the planning round. So there is that sort of built-in delay to it, but we're on it.
And I think in the interim, it is still helping us to steer business, isn't it? Particularly those areas that we are outside of tolerance. And it's useful to see the updates on there of the things that we're doing. So,
can I just make a suggestion? I'm just thinking about timing, that if we've got the development session in April, whatever we come up with as a revised BAF is going to need to go to risk and audit.
Yeah, I was subject of that because I thought, hang on a minute, I'll work it out outside. But it's,
I wrote May down though, so it's.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Maybe not at board in May, but we'll do it.
But it will be at risk and audit. Yeah.
But there'll be a plan. Is
Yeah,
basically what you're saying.
yeah.
So we're waiting for that plan to come forward after the 3rd of April. Any more questions or comments on the back? Sam?
I just had a quick one. I think I agree with some of the comments that reflect the development that's gone in, because it's actually much clearer to see where some of the underlying issues are. On the population health outcome, one of the issues that I picked up, and I just wanted to check in with this, was the appointment of SROs for each of the 5 pillars, and it looked like no progress had been made. I'm also aware, I think the NHS Joint Forward Plan is being refreshed, so I didn't know if the board had a comment on how to kind of move past that, because if the plan is to continue with those 5 pillars, making progress on getting clear SROs in place and clear plans seems really crucial to me.
I've got a view, but
well, so Sam, you're quite right. The pillars and the board assurance framework were developed pre-election, and it's been clear since that election happened that the policy direction is changing and changing radically. And we're expecting the publication of the 10-year plan April, May, probably more like May. And we really need to see that before we confirm the direction of travel that we need to take with regards to the Joint Forward Plan. So whilst the goals, the targets and the Joint Forward Plan remain the right things to pursue, we might need to go about it in a slightly different way with a different emphasis and focus and prioritisation. And so it probably makes sense for us to pause that work until we've gone through that, so we see the detail of the 10-year plan and what we're going to do about it, and then reset on that basis. Thank you.
If there's any more hands, then so I'm going to suggest that we move on to your report, Patricia. Thanks.
So I'll take the report as read. Tried to simplify it this time because I didn't want us to get distracted away from the 2 or 3 things that are really important that are in train at the moment. So they are obviously the changing landscape of leadership at NHS England. You all know that Richard is due to step down as NHS England Chief Executive at the end of this month. And there will be further changes in leadership, I expect, over the next few weeks. Jim Mackey will take over as interim Chief Exec on the transition Chief Exec on the 1st of April, and we're already starting to get some guidance and thoughts around how Jim wants to manage that period of transition and possibly for how long that is going to be. We're also in the middle of developing and finalising our plan for 25-26 in terms of the operating plan, including the financial envelope that wraps around it. And in that context, also finishing the medium-term plan for submission. And there's some detail in the report around the amended government mandate for the NHS, which signals a very different direction of travel. And we'll expect that that will continue in line with government policy. The other thing to note in the report is that, as you know, we've been doing quite a lot of work on rationalising our estate because having multiple locations is expensive, but also because it's really important as we move forward the work of the system that we start to integrate ourselves as an organisation in with our partners. We're almost at the conclusion of relocating the majority of staff from this building into Dorset Council offices at Collerton House. We as execs will move within 4 weeks following that, because we've still got capital work to do in that space around creating the right offices. And in terms of our base in the east, we've now secured a number of desks at BCP offices. So we're now starting to integrate ourselves properly so that it gives us more opportunities for integrated working going forward. In respect of the report, if you move to the conclusion, there are a number of things that we're trying to land by the end of this year, which are really important in setting the foundation for the medium-term plan. So we are on track at the moment there's no reason to believe that we will go off track to land the revised financial position for 24-25 and our commitment to the operating standards. And David will bring you up to speed later on with Rob on where we are with the 25-26 plan. And the medium-term plan. We're still working with our partners on what our contractual approach will be from the 1st of April beyond, and where we might land in terms of final contractual envelopes when the work around the medium-term plan is concluded. We're continuing with our transformation programmes, and actually you'll see that in the papers for today there is a final business case for integrated neighbourhood teams that takes us on to the next level, and Future Care is making good progress around the cash release and savings that need to occur during the next 18 months, but also the transformation of urgent emergency care services. And in terms of end of life, neurodiversity and the homeless communities, we have a contractual process now for our hospices, which we'll pick up later on. That is in the context of a piece of work that's being concluded shortly on our whole ICB strategy for end of life care, recognising previously that we have a lot of work to do to make that service fit for purpose. Around neurodiversity, we are about to implement a profiling tool for that service for our communities, and the first priority for that will be to make sure that everybody that is currently on our backlog waiting list, which exceeds 7,000, goes through that triage tool and has the immediate support they need whilst they are, and if they are identified as needing a formal diagnosis, that then we'll move to provide that as quickly as possible. The intention being that in 6 months' time, in September, we will have worked on a full new model for neurodiversity services, which will start to commission before the end of this financial year. And then Paul is also working, as you saw from the briefing that we had at the last board, on the long-term strategy for our homeless communities, working with partners that are leading on that across local authority boundaries. So those are the highlights I wanted to raise. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone.
Questions or comments, Lisa?
I really like this simplified report. I find it a lot easier to kind of navigate through. So yeah, that's good. It just cuts to what we need to be talking about, which was really helpful. Thank you for that. I just want to pick up on the end of life care, and you might not be able to comment on this because it might be sensitive, but I'm just curious as to why Weldmar particularly, but Marie Curie as well, took the decision not to join the framework, and what was it about the framework? And then moving on from that, the patients who are currently receiving care in Weldmar or by Marie Curie, do they stay there and finish their care there, or do we move them mid-care, which is going to have implications, and it's tricky?
Yeah, can I respond? So thank you, Lisa. So first question is, both of those organisations' boards took the decision not to join the framework in terms of their business models going forward. Okay. So and there was quite lengthy, protracted discussions with both those providers.
Was it operational or financial, or a bit of both?
Probably both. And then the second part is, we just need to be mindful that the people who they're caring for will be depreciating in numbers. So by the time there is a handover in April, those numbers will be quite small because people's lives will have ended. So it is being very much a managed position, and is the transition's already happening with some of the staff.
Okay, thank you. I've got Nick, and then Dan, Siobhan and Rhiannon.
Mine was also on end of life care, so I did meet with Weldmar. I can give you more information later if you want. I'm just worried about capacity. Are we confident of the capacity within the framework now that the two very large providers have disappeared or will be disappearing?
I'd like to answer that, because actually they provide a very small amount of our end of life care.
Very, very small percentage of our, most over 80% of our end of life care is provided by our framework providers, not by Weldmar.
Okay, it's not getting out in the press at all.
I think it's a particular aspect of end of life care, Nick. So this is care at home rather than the hospice. So we still have contracts, obviously, with the hospice. So the actual market involvement is quite limited for both Weldmar and you're right, maybe it isn't as blatant, but yeah. most of our end-of-life care is actually provided by our framework providers, and we have no concerns in terms of the capacity and capability. In fact, it's a market that has really expanded in recent years through working with local authorities in that space.
Of the three hands that are up, Dan, Siobhan and Rhiannon, is anybody else wanting to ask anything on end-of-life care? Okay, so I'll go to Dan next then.
Thanks. I really wanted to welcome the co-location. It's brilliant, and the more of that we can do, the better. Linked to that, and it might be for part two, I just wanted some assurance on the governance of that, and if kind of we've taken the right lease extensions, capital spend. I presume it's within the budget that we set for the year. Just that we were safe on that, because I don't think the board or committee have seen any papers on new leases. That feels a bit unusual, but might be within our scheme. And so I just wanted to pick up on that, but it might be you want to take it in part two or now.
So we're saving money. It's all within the existing budget. So in terms of bringing leases to the board, I'll go away and check around that one.
I think they're below the SFRs. That's why I'd like to go.
No, yeah, they are. We just need to double check. There's not a bit of there's a instead with that tie-in so wrong. I don't think they should have. I will go and check.
It'd just be nice to tick that box here as well.
If you can check and come back, then that'll be helpful. Siobhan?
I know that's not the purpose of the report, but I just think it's really important that probably after about 10 years of planning, we are at the point of having the keys to the beach building at Royal Bournemouth, and maternity and neonates. And I think for public messaging, it's really important that we sort of discuss, mention it today, is actually moving between the 29th of March and the 2nd of April, which is 3 weeks on Monday. So services will move from St Mary's in Poole to the Royal Bournemouth Hospital. And it's really quite exciting. And everybody is doing a lot of simulation training. You've got details on other services that are moving in, but they're not moving site to site. So they are just transfers from within Bournemouth. But actually, this is quite a pivotal moment for people really across Dorset, because it's been a long time in the planning.
Yeah, thank you, Siobhan. It's really pivotal, actually, isn't it? Because this was all part of the clinical services review, as you mentioned. So to be getting to quite a significant milestone, one that we've all watched is it's really good. So Rhiannon and then Forbes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really helpful to hear that news, Siobhan. It's not just good news for Dorset, is it? A good news story for maternity service across England is really positive. My question was just around the breast screening campaign launch, which is really good to see. But I just wondered where Dorset stacked up in terms of, I guess, our position against the data that's in your report, which is national data. I just wondered if we were kind of matching on the percentage, or whether we're under that or over that. But you may not have, might need to.
I suspect you don't.
Okay, I can pick it up off.
All right. So Sue, do you want to pick it up offline and then okay. Thank you. Forbes.
Yeah, thank you. It was just a comment really in the general practice section about the announcement within the past week about uplift for general practice contract. So the government's announced an 889 million uplift. Which is very good news, and it does demonstrate an element of putting the money where their mouth is in terms of starting to support this left shift. The note of caution is the devil is in the detail, and we don't yet have the detail. And we haven't been excluded from the national insurance and living wage increases. We think that's contained within that uplift, and therefore I just have to say that we can't, the expectation at this stage can't be that something that's all going to be in services, because actually a significant percentage as yet unclear will go on, quite frankly, recognising the requirements around national insurance and living wage. And we're still in discussion about local deliberations around the areas in our contract that's set outside the national deliberation. That's all to be concluded.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So I don't see any more hands. So I'm going to suggest then that we go for a break. We'll take the break now. And if we start back at 2:45, so you've got 5 minutes extra, which means we must start on time at 2:45. And then we'll pick up the integrated performance reports, primarily through the committee escalations. But if I can ask the chairs to just think about the IPR as you're going through that, and then we'll work through the other items. Thank you very much. we're going to start with the committee escalation reports as part of the integrated performance reporting. And the first one that we're going to go to is the ICP, the Integrated Care Partnership. In the absence of Cecilia, David, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jenny. So I'm the ICB sponsor in the Integrated Care Partnership. So felt it would be helpful if I provided an overview of that meeting. So you've got the highlight report there. The things I would pull out of that are just to signal that we approved revised terms of reference, which were taking account of new membership or membership adjustments. We also approved a proposal on the new chairing arrangements, which came up earlier in our discussion, alongside some revised support arrangements. So more specifically, we've agreed that our two local authority leaders, that's Nick and Millie from Dorset Council and BCP respectively, will now co-chair the ICP. And this is a significant move because it supports the ambition for the ICP to be a truly system forum with our two distinct place-based footprints. And of course, in confirming Nick and Millie as the co-chairs, we are also recognising the end of Cecilia's tenure. And it's already come up, but to reiterate our thanks for the leadership and direction that Cecilia provided in the ICP that has really set this group up well for the future work we want to carry out. We also in the meeting received some really great reports on improving outcomes and considered the role of the ICP within that, on housing, on the holiday activities and food programme successes in BCP. And we also received actually the first iteration of the Get Britain Working report that we've also discussed today. And then finally, to draw to your attention, we did some work on the health and wellbeing strategies, noting clear alignment and shared commitments across our place footprint, our neighbourhoods and communities. And there's undoubtedly a shared commitment to more investment in prevention, early help activities, which will form a large part of the ICP's focus and work into the next operating year. So there were no significant issues for escalation to the board, so that's all I was saying this time.
Thank you very much, David. So are there any questions or comments? Can I then, in the absence of anybody else, just say thank you to Nick and to Millie for deciding to take on the ICP as joint chairs. I do think it's an opportunity for us as a system to have local government leading that. So thank you and wishing you all the best in that role. Let's move on then to the Strategic Objectives Committee.
Thank you, Jenny. It's largely as read. I'll just pull out a few things. Obviously, we're very interested in the joint forward plan, which the board is as well, and we're looking for a refresh of that to come to the committee via email so that we can be cited on what's going forward with it. The inward investment activity report was interesting, and it's clear that this is something that we need to look at going forward and develop further, but it has to be aligned to what our priorities are. And that is one of the key things, that we need to define the system's priorities and make sure we actually make sure that what investment we've got, and it isn't a vast amount, but what we do have is effectively deployed. So there's quite a lot of discussion around that. It was interesting to look at the benefits log from the gateway process. And there was an awful lot of detail for us all in the committee, but it was fascinating to look through the whole process and see that it is working with real rigour, because when it came to the board some time ago, that was one of the things people were concerned about, that there should be rigour with regards to the gateway and decisions taken there and how they're monitored. And we took real assurance from that, which is important. The Dorset Innovation Hub, we had our quarterly report there. It's clear that this is now a period of transition, and we're going to have to look at future approaches as we go forward. So that's a key piece of work for the committee. We also discussed the remit in light of the upcoming 10-year health plan, considering the feedback from the board development session, and had an update on both future care and integrated neighbourhood teams. We felt that there needed to be some refinement of the terms of reference for the SOC committee so that we have a clear strategic, once clear strategic objectives are agreed, because we need to map which initiatives sit with which committees to ensure that there is effective monitoring and to avoid duplication. And that's something that I know that a number of the committee chairs share as an issue going forward, just to make us more effective. No significant issues for escalations. We reviewed the corporate risk and the strategic risks, and noted the work that was ongoing there. Nothing to really bring forward on those ones.
Thank you very much, Kay. Any questions or comments? Dan?
A comment, and it's just to save you bringing up again in a couple of minutes, but using integrated neighbourhoods as an example, I think there is something for us to do about how these things are flowing through committees and who's doing what. And I think it's in a couple of the report page. So just to support what Kay was saying, it doesn't feel like quite getting it right.
Let's note that, and I'm sure there will be a period of time to do that reflection. So, Kay, I'm going to stay with you for the Prevention, Equity and Outcomes Committee.
Well, the first thing is, of course, we have brought to the board the specialised commissioning delegation for approval, which is on the agenda today. The update on the access for wellbeing was also mentioned in DHC's section for the CEO's report, and it's good to see progress in this, and we can look forward to the point where outcomes and impacts can begin to be analysed, because we haven't got to that point yet, but it's very important that we do. On the tackling inequalities, which is an ongoing discussion, we looked again at the work for hypertension and the impact that is having specifically on the inequalities issue, and the fact that that programme is making greater gains in narrowing the gap for inequalities than in other areas, and that's particularly important to see that that is happening. And we would hope going forward that continues to be the case and the gap narrows further, which would be the intention. We had quite a concerning report on the sustainability of pharmacy, noting the current and predicted funding challenges. There's not a lot we can do about it apart from express our support and thanks to pharmacy for all that they're doing. But it does look not untenable, but it looks extremely dodgy in some ways, and it's not a funding system that is going to lead to sustainability if we're not careful. As I say, there's limited that we can do, just as there is with doctor's contract, which is outside our control, but it is something to keep our eye on, because if pharmacy continues to struggle at the level that Fiona Arnold was reporting, it's going to become a significant problem for primary care as a whole and the whole primary care system. So that's something actually to keep an eye on. But there are still areas of improvement which we were really thankful that Fiona drew out for us. The GP section is as read, really. There's not much more to say about that one. And anyway, there's an update in the papers for today for the board. On the risk section, there's currently no time frame for resolution of the autism spectrum disorder risk. And we really need to firm up some of the work there to provide clarity and timescales on some of that work area. SEND, we were still waiting for the Ofsted report from BCP. I'm not sure if they've arrived yet. They were expected this month, really. Not yet. Yeah. So we had some discussions about that. And that was really about it from that point of view.
Questions or comments? Thank
you, Chair. Thank you, Kay. I completely agree about the pharmacy risk.
Yeah.
Without going into a huge amount of detail today, I was just going to flag that the pharmaceutical needs assessment, which is a statutory function of the Health and Wellbeing Boards, is happening at the moment. So I would say that's an opportunity for our system to make some statements about potential gaps in pharmacy coverage. And the key issue, if I'm putting my other hat on, in terms of public health services, we're really struggling to get some really essential public health pharmacy services delivered, particularly things like supervised consumption for people who need to take opiate substitution medication. One issue we're hearing is that pharmacies are starting to select preferentially to take part in some of the contracts where they're likely to earn a bit more. So pharmacy first sounds like a great idea, but actually it's leading to pharmacies choosing to put resources against those contracts and not pick up some of the smaller essential contracts. But I think the point is, let's use the refresher that needs assessment to try to make some statements about where we think there's a risk of some key gaps.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. And Kay, as you were reporting back, I was wondering actually if that was an issue that should have been part of the escalation to the board.
We discussed that at the time, and it was felt that it wasn't yet an escalation to the board because it needed to be raised at board level, but not an escalation to the board because there are limited levers that we can use to deal with it. And Fiona was trying to leverage those as it was, and would come back to us at our next report to give us a sense of whether it got any better or worse, or was still just staying at the state it was. It's a risk because we can identify the problems, but it's not yet a risk because of lack of delivery. Although what you're saying suggests that there's a greater risk there, Sam, than we discussed in that sense.
We're in discussions and negotiations, but I'm hoping the needs assessment will clarify that.
Yeah. So it may very well come to the board at a later stage, but we didn't feel at this point it was ready for escalation to the board.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments then? So then let's move on to Lisa as chair of the People Engagement and Culture Committee.
Thanks, Jenny. Top of the page, and rightly so, we had a really good, honest discussion about the Equality Delivery System final performance rating, which is achieving. We'll talk about this in more detail later on this afternoon. We'll also talk about the equality objectives for 2025-26. So I won't go into a lot of detail except to say that this afternoon what I'd ask you to look for is two things. We did achieving as the rating, but only just. And I'd encourage you not to take that at face value because there is some work we have to do that you could be masked by an achieving rating. There are some real issues that we need to address underneath. So do have a look and get into that granular detail because there are some areas there for more scrutiny and more work. We did receive reassurance, though, that actions were in place to address some of that stuff, but still, I think it's really important that we keep on top of that. So it's one for this afternoon, but it's definitely something to watch, and it's something the committee will continue to watch also as part of the work plan for the rest of the year and next year. We talked about the IPR, of course we did, because whole-time equivalents are off plan and we were worried about that. I would say that we did get reassurance at the committee that everyone was doing as much as they could to bring that back into plan, but we didn't get assurance that that would happen, and I would say it won't. So we talked about that. Now it's a really fast-moving situation, so since the committee meeting, no doubt that things have moved on again. So I invite those of you around the table who are involved in those discussions to come in and update if you feel that that's appropriate at this point. We also talked about how do we make sure we're not here again next year, because we are almost where we are now this year, but it's going to be really important to figure out how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again. And now we've got more information from NHS England, we can kind of see that we've got an even steeper mountain to climb next year as well. So it's going to be really important that we get in front of this and we don't end up in the same position that we were in this year and getting sideswiped by numbers that come in that we didn't expect. So that's something again that the committee will keep an eye on next year and from here on in, really. We did receive an update on the integrated neighbourhood teams as well, although our update was very people focused. So we were looking at resourcing, and one of the things that we talked about was making sure that all of the stakeholders and all of the organisations and communities involved in the integrated neighbourhood team work willingly and enthusiastically release resources and people's time to work on this really important programme, because this is a transformational programme that will get us to where we need to be down the line. So it's really important that it might not be part of a quick fix, but it is a fundamental part of making healthcare better for people in Dorset down the line as a strategic priority. So we were worried that, given the urgency in some of the short-term challenges, that it would be difficult to free up people and people's time for this piece of work. I have to say, I haven't really seen that play out, but it was something to watch, and it was something that we discussed at the committee. And finally, we talked about risk, and I just want to pull out one thing here, which is the Oliver McGowan Learning Disability and Autism Training, which has funding, but not indefinitely. So it's something to keep an eye on. But also take up of this training to make sure that it happens and that people are trained in this. And this was prompted by a theme that came from the first agenda item that I mentioned, which was the equality objectives. Sometimes we can look at reports that have statistics in them, and we can look at risks, and we can not see the people on the end of this stuff and the impact it has on people. And so when we had the Oliver McGowan training question, we started to talk about the risk here isn't that people don't get their training and we don't get enough bums on seats for the training. The risk here is that patients who are neurodiverse do not get an adequate or acceptable level of care because people aren't taking up this training. And so what we want to do is just rewrite some of this risk to make sure that that is clear in the risk register. Let's get the risk right, and let's treat it in the seriousness that it needs to be treated, because this is about patient experience and it's about health inequalities at the end of the day. And I think I'd also extend that into the EDI conversation we were having at the beginning as well. It's really easy just to see these things as statistics, but we've got to remember there are people on the end of these statistics and they feel this, and we've really got to understand that. And when these things don't happen, the risk is the people, not the statistics. I think that's more or less it, unless anyone wants to come in on the whole-time equivalent numbers and whether we can move on the committee.
Can I take that first? Okay, I know you've got a question, but is there anybody that's able to update on the whole-time equivalents on where it was at the committee?
Yeah,
Siobhan? Oh, sorry.
Go on, Siobhan.
No, I was just going to say that I don't know I should be able to recall the absolute number, but I can't. But I think all of us as providers are, Nick, you can correct me, but we are not going to achieve the target at year end. From a UHD perspective, there were 3 drivers for that. One was linked to escalation and no criteria to reside position. And well, actually 2 really, those 2 are interrelated. And the other one was mental health support workers caring for patients on wards. So that sort of drove a higher staff position than we hoped for. That doesn't mean we're not driving to reduce it as much as we can in the next few weeks, and also that we're not working on the numbers for next year, because we are.
And those issues probably, well, they're not going to go away for the beginning of next year. So I guess Lisa's question around what is the plan becomes really pertinent then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then Emma.
Yeah, sort of similar position for Dorset County and Dorset Healthcare as well, and some similar drivers, some different drivers. For example, secondment of services that DCH picked up, for example, impacted our workforce in the way we have anticipated. What we have seen at DCH is an ongoing reduction in our WTE numbers after we put in place even more stringent control mechanisms sort of towards the back end of the last calendar year when we were seeing the shift, but obviously it takes a while for those things to come through. So we are seeing that reduction in trajectory as we go into 25, 26. So I feel like we'll be in a more positive position as we go into next year. The other interesting thing is that our Mars schemes didn't have the anticipated impact that we expected as well. So that's one of the things that's just left us off the position we thought we would be in.
Okay, Thank you. And Emma, you wanted to come in as well.
No, I was just going to say that whilst it's not been necessarily an improving position, I think over the last couple of weeks since the committee, there's been more understanding about the why. And actually, I know that we've got the operational plan on the agenda for later. And I think there's that recognition that actually the kind of where we are ending that year end actually then sets the tone for the challenge for the year ahead. And I'm sure we'll be picking up through the work stream work that David's introduced in his paper around how we'll be focusing on addressing some of that going into the next year.
Okay, Lisa, is that okay? I'm going to move on to other questions then. So I know Kay has.
Actually, could I just endorse what Lisa was saying at the end there, that quite often we shouldn't be looking at the risk from the point of view of the activity, but the lack of the activity's impact on our population, and that we should be keeping in the forefront of our mind how it's impacting on the people of Dorset. And we are inclined at times to look at activity and plans and what we're doing rather than the impact it's made. And I see that through both my committees at times, and it's an ongoing issue that too often it's about what we're doing and not how we're helping the people of Dorset. So I just wanted to endorse what Lisa's saying and say that I've seen that as well in a number of other areas.
Any more questions or comments then for Lisa? Let's move on to Dan as chair of the Productivity and Performance Committee.
Thanks. I'll just pick up your comment on integrated performance report, kind of going into the break. So set out in the paper, we looked at some positive performance around longer rates, the A&E standard and virtual wards, and talked quite a lot about the challenging no criteria to reside, the impact on the finances and the future care work that's ongoing. We talked about operational planning, both in terms of performance and finance. I won't be rehearsing a lot of that because there's a part 2 paper on that this afternoon. Similarly, this afternoon, there's the decision on the business case for integrated neighbourhood teams. We had a really good, robust conversation about that and kind of got to consensus. The committee was happy to endorse it coming to the board, but the steer was around real clarity on the level of investment, the level of benefit and the level of cashable benefit. And so I know that's in the papers for this afternoon. And then the last thing I'd highlight is there's a further meeting planned this month. I think the date's been arranged to really help stress test and put some governance around the assumptions and the kind of evidence trail behind the assumptions, particularly on next year's budget, because we as a board really want to avoid setting assumptions that we come off track from pretty quickly in the financial year. So kind of looking for a bit of a step change in what's a really challenging budget next year. I'll just pause and see if Sue or Rob want to add or detract from any of that.
Yeah, so if I'm just going to update on the one thing that's materially different to what we talked about the PPC. We've already alluded to it. So it's been announced there's 900 million extra funding onto the NHS and it's cash backs as well. So we're working through at the moment what that actually looks like. Paul has already raised that there's no real rules that are visible yet around that. There's an expectation that we will improve our positions. This 25 million deficit we are expected to improve. But again, we need to work through how we're going to transact that. So it's a month 12 issue. This board is about month 10, but we're just flagging that we will have some extra funding coming in, expecting to improve the position, but we need to work through how we transact that and where to.
Thank you. Sue, did you want to add anything?
Just 2 things if I may, that are different from the paper that went to PPC from a performance point of view. So for 65 waiters, the target remains 0 for the end of March. There is a potentially with updates, but this is due to a supply issue. So like I say, target still remains 0. And the second thing I would just raise is the 909 ambulance category 2 is back down to what you would be more familiar with, 34.8 minutes in month 10, as opposed to the 60.5 that's in the paper that went to the committee. So
really helpful. Thank you very much. So any questions or comments for Dan, Rob or Sue even?
Sounds like a band, doesn't it?
It doesn't look like they are, so let's move on. And we're going to go to Rhiannon for the Quality Experience and Safety Committee.
Thank you.
So we started the committee meeting second time. We've done this now with a person/patient experience story, which I think is really helpful in terms of considering the impact on population and people in Dorset. The story was around a young person with autism and ADHD, particularly around the impact on people in transition from children and young people services through to adult services. It was very relatable to the fact that we had learning disabilities and mortality review paper. So we tried to link these stories to something on the agenda. So just to go back up to the top of this escalation report. So we did approve the review process for learning disability mortality review programme. There had been some pilot work that's been happening. Although this is moving away from the national approach to LEADER, as in the acronym, taking more of a patient safety incident response framework approach. And actually, we were impressed actually in terms of what we were hearing about the ability to get learning out more quickly, but also the efficiency element, I think, was quite profound. So we heard, we could take reassurance that the region is very supportive of this. So we were assured that it wasn't going to kind of negatively impact on the scrutiny, etc., and our ability to take assurance over the processes. We also approved the South West Ambulance Quality Assurance Framework, particularly wanting to take assurance that it was going to pick up aspects around the impact on patient safety from timeliness issues, for example. And we also approved the Dorset ICS quality framework, which although we were happy to approve it, and it's very necessary, particularly thinking about the specialist commissioning arrangements, so ability to really, I guess, monitor the quality aspects of that. However, we were keen that iteratively that the framework kind of moves more towards that sort of quality management system approach, which NHS Impact and the Quality Board nationally also refer to. So they had picked up national guidance in the refresh, but I think there's more that over time could be further strengthened. And obviously they'll need to consider any changes that might need to happen as a result of the publication of the 10-year plan. What else? Yes, we also reviewed the action plan in relation to the intensive and assertive community mental health review. This is something that's been to board previously. We did ask that further work was done in relation to identifying the risks and also the timelines for that action plan. Obviously very important, very high profile action plan. And then so the committee reviews all of the risks in how they relate to quality, although we did get into quite a lengthy discussion really around one of the risks that we don't see currently in the corporate risk register around cyber. And I think there was a general concern that organisations generally do feature a cyber risk on corporate risk plan registers, sorry. So we were really asking, I guess, for some this to go back for some further discussion within the executive, particularly with the volatility that's now around us getting even more increased, probably something we really need to consider further.
Okay, Pam, do you want to add?
Yeah, could I just add to, I just wanted to just build on Rhiannon's comment, the intensive and assertive community mental health review action plan. That is our action plan as a system in response to the Nottingham killings. It is really, it is really important for us, and there is a requirement that we will have this plan at board for the next board meeting, an agreed system plan. It is incredibly comprehensive. I think what we saw at Quality Experience Committee was a plan that's almost there. It just needs some further refinement. Significant amount of the work sits within Dorset Healthcare, but there is obviously system partners will also be included in that as well. So just to confirm that the expectation is the plan will be coming to board directly by, I think by July it has to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so any questions or comments for Rhiannon? And we move on then to the Risk and Audit Committee and Dan.
And happily my last act as chair in that. Over to Adrian. I'll just pull out 3 things. We focused on external audit, so the preparation for the production on the management side of the annual report and accounts, and we took a report from KPMG on their planning approach. I guess I'd just say preemptively a massive amount of work goes into that, and so kind of really conscious of the load on not just Rob's team as well as Lizzie's team, but that would be an awful lot of work. So just noting that and kind of saying thank you in advance. We took a update from internal audit that was positive. There was a really good report on key financial controls in terms of the level of assurance provided, and that's pulled out in the report. And then kind of segueing on from what Rhiannon said, we then had a conversation about cyber, because audit committee is the place that looks across the whole risk register. We kind of talked about the strategic digital maturity risk in the BAF and the corporate risk, and I know the execs have taken that away. Sorry, I forget which exec leads on kind of cyber and digital, but it was a nice. The reason I'm raising it is it was a nice flow from quality into audit. I don't know if you want to add, but if not, I have to take any questions. So on cyber, I meant broad audit stuff rather than cyber.
So that was very quick response. I can pick that up if it's helpful.
A couple of issues that we talked about our internal audit plan, and whilst we were on track with most of our objectives, there were 2 or 3 that were over a year in delivery. So we've agreed at execs that we will have a closer focus on the internal audit plan, and also that to make sure that our audits deliver the right level of assurance where we need it, we will have a discussion around each of the terms of reference of the internal audits before they start and make sure the terms of reference are properly.
Thank you. Yeah, that seems important, doesn't it? So, okay, Julia.
Yeah, just picking up on the cyber comment, cyber risk is something that we are really focused on in BC Council. You know, it's something that has there's been incidents in a number of local authorities. It's something that we're very focused on. We've got quite targeted kind of additional compliance training for staff around it, for example, and we're planning an exercise at some point in this year. So it might be something that's worth a system conversation around, because it's something that's a growing issue really, rather than a risk across the piece. And our systems are so interconnected as well that an aspect of that might be worth.
I think that would be good, because I think we've not put it on in hindsight because we have really good processes and we keep getting externally audited all the time, but actually it doesn't mean that it's still not a risk, and it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be on a corporate risk register.
Paul, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, so we've got a number of risks that I hold that are a level below the overall cyber, because there are many elements of it and we have a risk according to each. So I have asked the team to then look at what is an overarching risk that encompasses all of those, so that we'll have something and we'll make sure that it's agreed within our governance process. Depending on our controls, it may not trigger being the level of scrutiny that it might, but let's wait and see how that plays out. But certainly we're going to bring those together, so they are expressed and they are within our organisation, but they are at a level of detail below an overall
operational as opposed to,
well, the different elements of cyber vulnerability are covered separately rather than an overarching one.
And actually one of the decisions that we made around quitting one of our current locations was about cyber security risk, but it would have taken too much investment to deal with because of external, shall we say, from outside the UK, that we decided to quit that. So.
Dan, you wanted to come back?
This didn't come up in the committee, but what Paul said really helped and triggered the thought, because what we don't want to do is just look in the silo. So kind of business continuity, kind of so cyber in the round, kind of, I think, which I'm sure is what I saw Gillian nodding, BCP do, because where those local authorities have been hit, then your services go down and you get into business continuity beyond risk.
But Paul, you'll pick up Gillian's point, will you, about
Well, I know that we have a meeting between our CIROs, so our independent responsibles regularly anyway, so I'll make sure that we're picking that up. And I know we're picking it up as a system because it's going to form part of the development of the digital strategies, how we bring things together. And we're working with, you know, certainly NHS system partners in that collective space. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments for Dan? So while I'm waiting for Tricia then, because she's next. Maybe not. Do you want to come on then and do the SEG one, and then I'll pick up my comments after that?
Yeah, so the SEG meeting, there was some highlights here from the actual content of the meeting, but then I'll just talk quickly about the change in focus that we're going to have from April onwards. So in the actual content of the discussion, we approved the Wessex Innovation Plan, which was a really big step forward for us, because previously we really struggled to get the Wessex Innovation Plan, when it was the AHSN, to really reflect the business needs of ICBs and partner organisations across Dorset and Hampshire. So some really important partnership work with the new chief executive and chair has meant we've got to a much better place now in terms of that being reflective of what we need. So we're really pleased to sign that off. We endorsed the direction of travel through the INT business case, recognising that it would be coming to board for final approval. We also agreed extended investment into the Dorset Care Record, because whilst we're all financially challenged, that record that sits above our systems, which currently do not have interoperability connections, is really important summary care record for clinicians to use immediately. So we supported that. We also had an update from our two local authorities on where we were with place development, which again, in the strategic context of where we need to be around INTs being only one part of that development at place around thriving communities, getting that context around the work that's being done that would wrap around those teams was really positive. And then we also had a bit of a celebration around the Alex inspection at BCP and the improvement in rating, which was fantastic. At the end of the meeting, we talked about the change in focus, because we are going to change the terms of reference for the system executive group, and that we might need to think about bringing those to board, in that we currently spend a lot of time focusing on operational priorities, when actually we need to get into the detail of having oversight of our big system-wide transformation pieces, because the operational delivery is dealt with within other groups, delivery groups and the subcommittees. So that's where we're going to go from the 1st of April, which means a different style of reporting into SEG. We've also agreed that we will shift to a monthly meeting rather than what we have now, which is a meeting every other month. Every other month we'll do business, and we'll do that online by Teams in terms of business decisions, and then on the alternate months we'll come together face to face, because we've engaged an external partner to do some system leadership development with us as a core executive team that links across the system. And that individual and that organisation is also being engaged to support our integrated neighbourhood team developments around system leadership and what we need around that OD practice, and also with our future care programme. So we're starting to get a consistent approach to what system leadership means, and we're training a core member of staff to be able to lead in
that. Thinking through that Gillian said, I think it would be really welcome, actually, because I think one of the benefits, one of the opportunities of being an integrated care system and an integrated care board is the ability to be able to sit and think at that strategic level, isn't it? But I'm conscious that over the couple of years plus that we've been around, that we've kind of been drawn into the operational, just because of where the NHS is as a start, local government and others. So yeah, that's really welcomed.
So we tried to get that. We tried to get that consistency around system leadership, but also in the big change programs, have a consistent approach to change management and how we do that, and And I think that's going to really benefit our teams. One, because we're all speaking the same language, even though we might not be using exactly the same methodologies. But in the system leadership space, we need to support leaders to be able to work outside their organisational boundaries for the benefit of the system and understand what that looks like.
Yeah. Thank you. So just for the sharp-eyed of you, you would have noticed that we had 2 non-execs who reported back on 2 committees because they have been chairing 2 committees whilst we've been short of non-executives. So Kay's actually been doing it for some time.
Yes, that's a long time.
So and Dan more recently around also taking on audit committees. So I wanted to say thank you to both of them first of all. The second thing was just to let you know that of course you've seen Adrian today. So and Dan made it clear that that will be going over to Adrian
As soon as possible, I think he made that.
But we also have another non-executive. I can't say who that is at the moment because we're still going through clearance and stuff. But we do have another non-executive joining, and that non-executive is likely to be taken over once they've got through their induction and stuff. That's strategic outcomes committee. So thank you to both of you for kindly stepping in and doing that. And hopefully it won't be too long before you're both relieved to kind of focus on one committee. So thank you. Right, I see Bex has joined us. So we're going to move on to the specialised commissioning, which is one item that we have got on today for decision. Sue, I'm going to ask you to take us forward on that, please.
Sure. So further to this board's approval of the delegated commissioning model for specialised services in October of last year, today you're being asked to approve the delegation agreement, as are the other 6 ICBs across the Southwest as well. So that then allows the commissioning responsibilities to be delegated to the 7 ICBs from April of this year. There's a collaboration agreement outlining the way the 7 ICBs will make decisions. That also creates the role of principal commissioner, which is Somerset. Supporting the collaboration agreement are several other documents. So there's a finance SOP, so standard operating procedure, a quality framework and a risk management framework. And all of those have been co-designed and agreed by all 7 of the ICBs in the Southwest. The final collaboration agreement, just for note, that's here that will come for signature, will have some very minor differences from the version that we've got here. So the first is around the data and information governance schedule, and that's just to make sure that both the delegation agreement and the collaborative agreement mirror each other. And the second relates to staff and GP transfer. And on that note, just for awareness, staff from NHS England are due to transfer to Somerset in July. So just finally, the Prevention, Equity and Outcomes Committee, they've been overseeing the delegation process overall, including the safe delegation checklist that the paper refers to. There are some actions that are still underway, but there's no concerns and nothing that affects the decision of this board today to support the documents outlined in the paper. So the recommendation from the PIOC is for the board to approve the delegated agreement and therefore the signature of the documents that are outlined in 3.1 of the paper. And we have Bex here as well, so I just wanted to give Bex the opportunity to add anything else that you wanted to bring in.
No, nothing to add. I have chased today with the dates of when we're going to get both of those updated agreements, and as soon as they come, I'll let you know.
Thank you, Bex. And so I've got Sam first and then Pam. We are on questions and comments if anybody else wants to come in. So, Pam.
Thank you, Chair. So this takes me back to work I was probably involved in a couple of decades ago. So if I'm speaking from a lack of knowledge because things have moved on, please correct me. When I read this, I think the first thought I had was how much control will NHS Dorset have through the delegated commissioning process, because particularly specialist commissioning, my memory is that a lot of money is top sliced for high cost pathways, which are very specialist, there are public health consultants that work on some of those pathways, and I think I understood that those employees would transfer to Somerset. So it would be useful to start to explore at an early stage what's the potential for NHS Dorset to perhaps have a bit of an influence over our regional approach to specialist commissioning, and where's the opportunity to improve value. So not expecting an answer, but I think there's an opportunity there.
Presumably, though, that's something we've been thinking about whilst this work has been going. Rachel, sorry, you want to come in and send us back?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I should probably wear a different hat, shouldn't I? So as the current, sorry, it may not. I'm currently the also responsible for direct commissioning in the region. So I've got responsibility currently for the whole SpecCom budget. So it's a joy to hear it being delegated in a sense. Just to give you some reassurance, that we've had since, I think it's probably nearly 18 months now, a joint committee on which all of the ICBs sit. And there they agree and basically give instruction to the principal commissioner about how to use the allocation, but obviously work together because the footprint for 65% of the SpecCom service lines being delegated is a regional footprint. That doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities with the remaining 30% and into the 65% that allow for local flexibility. And there are some clearly understood mechanisms for bringing that for discussion at the Joint Committee and the Directors Group that sits beneath it, and then taking that forward. In fact, we look forward to that because that is the point of delegating, isn't it? Is that you start to explore those opportunities. But just to give you some assurance, I'm sure colleagues working on it from Dorset would that's been a very well developed forum and now committee, which would be a subcommittee, and it would be a subcommittee of this board. So that joint committee is a subcommittee of every ICB board, so it has the decision making authority.
Thank you, Bex.
I was just going to mention the joint committee, so that's brilliant. But also, Sam, I've just started exploring this week how we get our local people who are involved in SpecCom to set up a group to look at what the key issues are and how we can work then to influence at that joint committee. So if you can let me know who to contact from your team, we'll get that meeting set up.
Thank you. Pam.
Thanks. I just wanted to note that the paper includes the Dorset ICS quality framework, which I think is really important for us at Dorset local level, but there is a SpecCom quality framework that is still in draft because it will need to interface with us at the local level, and that is still not being finalised. And we do have a meeting with our relevant colleagues in NHSE next week to work through that across all of the 7 systems to understand that. So just for noting that there will be a standalone SpecCom quality framework as well.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? So this is here for approval, and we've been asked to approve the proposed delegated commissioning arrangements for us as an ICB to take on the delegated responsibility in accordance with the Green Services portfolio from April of this year. So just over 2 weeks' time. So is everybody happy to agree? You can wait, but yes. Okay, so I think that's agreed. So thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks, Bex, for coming in.
Thank you. Bye.
So we don't have any items for consent. Unless there was anything else that people wanted to pick up from the IPR that we didn't do earlier, I will move us to the questions or the question that we've had in from a member of the public. Happy for me to move there? Good. Okay, so we've had one, as you're aware, we need to have any questions from the public in advance. And I'm assuming that the member is here, Ms. Wiltshire, thank you very much. So, you work for HealthBus, the HealthBus Trust. And the question is, as it's on the screen there, could the NHS Dorset ICB board provide an explanation of the proactive measures being implemented to address the immediate healthcare needs and access barriers identified in the ICB Homeless Health Plan for individuals experiencing homelessness in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, Furthermore, when can individuals living on the streets expect to see systemic changes that facilitate improved access to healthcare services? Now, of course, we will respond formally, but the response in public I've asked to be put up on the screen also because it's quite a lengthy one. I will read it, but just so that you can digest it, I thought it makes sense for it to be on the screen. We currently commission homeless health services working with local authorities, charities, voluntary and community sector. And in response to the Health Watch report, have worked with our providers to ensure these services are accessible and meet the needs of patients. The services provide support to rough sleepers around areas of greatest needs in Weymouth and Boscombe. The aim being to support those in crisis and enable them to access mainstream services. The service supports those with complex needs and chaotic lifestyles to access primary medical services, including temporary and permanent GP registration. Those who have been excluded from general practice due to their behaviour are able to be supported through a special allocation scheme. Other examples of services available include, in the general practice arena, all primary care is available to the whole population, but there are 2 primary care networks with special interests in homelessness. South Coast Providence, which is in Bournemouth, and Royal Crescent in Weymouth. Both GP practices have changed their services to be more accessible to homeless patients, including surgeries and drop-in sessions at St Paul's Hostel and the Lantern. Dentistry and podiatry in the BCP area provide a peripatetic support arranged through the Health Bus contacts. Drug and alcohol services commissioned Public Health Dorset in Dorset Council and the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area. Mental health, homeless health service delivered by Dorset Healthcare. University Hospitals Dorset, out of hospital services. Bloodborne virus team for University Hospital Dorset. And more generally, pharmacy first, including vaccinations, supervised consumption, access to antibiotics to cover 7 common conditions, community dental services and digital literacy support through their primary care network. We have also worked closely with providers in BCP, including South Coast Medical and Health Bus, to try and join up and link services wherever possible. And we are optimistic that a joint working approach will be agreed in the near future, which will greatly enhance what we can offer the homeless population of BCP. That's the response to the question that we've had in public. And as I've said, we will also email that out. We haven't had any more questions from the public. So I'm going to move us on to any other business. I have 2 matters that I want to raise. I know Paul's got one. Can I just check if there are any other business? So if I just go around the table, David, Nick, Sam, any other business?
No, sorry.
Keep going around on the screen. No. Come down the other end. Paula? No. Okay. Paul, well, you have got one, haven't you?
Well, I have any more than one. You'd like to go first.
Yeah, do you want to go first?
The any other business relates to our contracts with the hospices. And I know we talked about end of life care earlier. This is related to their provision of specialist hospice services. And we have a number of providers within our system who provide excellent care, and we've got good evidence of that. And certainly that's been replicated in views from CQC. They have been providing those services for a number of years, but they are coming to the end of their contract that we have in place. We have put together a proposal of continuing that contract on the current terms for a 2-year +1 option arrangement. And all of the hospices are in favour of that. and we certainly have no concerns around the level of care that they are providing in that specialist hospice setting, and are a critical part of our services that we provide our population. We have talked about a wider end of life strategy, and timing wise, it will be much better to have that in place to then make sure that any contracts that we have reflect what that strategic approach is. But looking at the emerging themes coming from that strategy, the current arrangements that we have seem entirely consistent with what we predict our direction of travel will be, from that strategic point of view. Timing is why it's become here as any other business, because the level of the contracts would normally need board sign-off, and we would expect for PPC to provide the necessary scrutiny of that before recommending it to board. But those contracts come to the end at the end of this month. Now, it does raise a question as to why we missed the last the rhythm of committees, and I'm looking into that with the team, and certainly I'll provide the feedback. I don't have that at the moment, but I'll make sure that I find that out and provide that back. But the here and now position is the one that we have to manage. My request, and I've talked to with Dan, and I know that both Chair and Chief Exec have been involved in the considerations, is that we are able to delegate the decision making to PPC that has an extraordinary meeting in the diary that we can make use of. And that allows PPC to do the appropriate due diligence and interrogation of the contractual approach that we are taking, and then with permission from the board be able to make a decision around the award of those contracts ahead of the end of this month. That will help us with the ongoing relationship with our hospices, which continues to be excellent. I know there have been disagreements over elements of care, but this isn't one of those. And it will allow us to continue that relationship and help build the strategic approach we've got to end of life. So there's a request within that any other business to delegate that decision making to PPC.
Yeah, if I go to you first and then I'll pick up this as comment. So this is not ideal. This is not what we would normally do in terms of governance. It should have come to last PPC. But I think we've been concentrating wholeheartedly on the relationship and maintaining the relationship in light of the fallout from us moving to a complete framework approach for some of the end of life packages, and that's been our priority, if I'm absolutely honest, in trying to maintain that relationship going through this process. We did discuss at our last meeting, when we actually looked at this in more detail, whether we would bring forward to our board meeting whether we would approve a one-year contract with an intention then to get scrutiny through PPC and board to extend that to another 1 year plus, so we'd have the 2 year plus one. But we all agreed that we did not want to do that because that was not within our governance arrangements to do that, and that would be a workaround of where we are now. But also because, as I said earlier on, maintaining the relationship of trust with our hospices, given where they are financially, would took primacy. And if we'd done that, even though it would have made it easier for us transactionally, it would not have sat well with them. So sincere apologies for the fact that we're having this conversation now. And we will make sure through our new contract management database approach through APNIS, where we've now loaded all of our contracts on, that we don't end up in this place again, because there is a formal reminder review process built in that new system. Thank you, Patricia. That's helpful. So, Lisa.
It's just a request when we look at commissioning from hospices, but also anywhere else in BCSE. There was a survey done, I think it was the Charities Aid Foundation about 2 years ago, where they surveyed chief execs of charities and that were commissioned by statutory organisations like us. And 64% of those chief executives said that they were not paid enough as part of that commission contract to then deliver the service at cost. And so then they had to recruit fundraisers to go out and fundraise for the gap between what it cost them and what the statutory commissioners paid them. My request is, can we please not be one of those statutory commissioners? And can we make sure that when we do commission from anyone, but particularly BCSE, that we pay a fair rate and we don't force them to go and incur additional costs to fund the gap between what we pay them and what the service actually costs to deliver?
Thank you, Dan.
Just 2 quick points. One, well, thank Patricia for the openness, and I really applaud us on doing the right thing by the providers rather than trying to kind of just use our governance. So I think the governance should be flexed at the right time, and this is one of those times. The second bit I'd ask is that we just think about how we formalise the new system will help us. And I don't know what the time frame is or the scope of that, but I think there's an action from today about where we do that, how quickly, and through what means. I've kind of got internal audit in my head, but I think it'd be good to capture that as an action to make sure there's not a weakness in our system.
Any more additional to Patricia's apology? I just want us to note and recognise that we know that it's been a particularly stressful time for some of those hospices, not knowing what's happening nearly at the end of the financial year. It's been particularly stressful. So ideally, we would not have wanted to be in this position, but hopefully the methods that we put in place moving forward means that, you know, in a couple of years' time, and once these contracts start coming to an end, it'll be a different experience.
It will be, and what we will commit to is at our next system leadership team meeting, I've asked Rob and the team to come forward in the light of the new electronic system that we've got within a revised contract management framework. And once we've taken that through SLT, then we'll take it through the route of scrutiny into PPC to make sure everybody's happy that it's progress.
Thank you. So in the interim, is everybody happy to go down the delegated route that Paul has set out? Great, thank you very much. So we've got agreement to that. Okay, so my any other bits of business, relatively small. The first one is just to, in case you're not aware, but you have heard it mentioned today, this is the last time that we will be meeting in this very venue as an ICB, because you've heard earlier that we are moving into different office location. I think the benefit of that is something Patricia and I have discussed, is that it will give us more flexibility to alternate where we have the meetings, which we've tried to do, not always with success, but we have managed to get out of here. So I think it's a good thing, but this is the last time that we will be meeting here. So for the next meeting, please don't turn up here because you'll be in the wrong place. And then the very last thing is that this is my last meeting. So feels strange to be coming to the end of a period here, really. But as you know, I've stepped down from chairing the ICB in Dorset because I've been asked and agreed to take on a couple of additional roles alongside my chair role at University Hospital Southampton. So it is with sadness that I've come to an end here. It's been fabulous working as part of a system that is so committed to its communities and is constantly challenging itself around how we can do better and how we can make things flow and how we can work as a system. And we haven't always had easy conversations around the table. In fact, sometimes we've had some quite difficult conversations around the table. But the good thing is that everybody has been willing to do that. A number of you would have heard me say several times that if integrated care, health and care can't work in Dorset, it's not going to work anywhere. So I leave you with the challenge and the opportunity to be presenting to the rest of England just how it can work. And of course, internationally, because we know that we could be international exemplars around that. So thank you very much for the kindness that you showed me when I first came in, for working with me as we've gone through the last few years. And wish you all the best. I will certainly be watching from the sidelines to see how things go. So thank you.
Jenny, could I just say a few words on behalf of the board as well?
Okay.
As this is your last meeting. You joined us, of course, back when it was the CCG as chair of the ICS in those COVID days, which was extremely challenging for you in your early stages, wasn't it? So thank you very much for all of that. We all recognise your professionalism, Jenny, and in particular, the leadership qualities which you've always shown, which have played a great part in bringing together a very disparate group of people and turning it into an effective working team. When you look around the board today, at all the representatives from all the areas of Dorset today and how well we are working together. A lot of that comes down to the work that you've done to bring people together, to make them feel valued, to make their voice recognised and heard, and that has made a significant difference. You've modelled a really inclusive, values-driven leadership style, which has kept us focused on the needs of the people of Dorset and what we can do to make things better for people. And we really, really thank you for that. We wish you well on your new role, both at Portsmouth and Isle of Wight, and alongside what you're doing at Southampton. If you do for them what you've done for us, they're very, very lucky to have you. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Yeah, it's very kind of you. Okay, and thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I was going to move us to a review of the meeting. So let's review the meeting. So any comments on in terms of review meeting? Thank you, Siobhan.
It ended well.
It did. Anything else? No? Okay. So let's go to key messages then. And Liz, I suspect you've been capturing these as we've been going. So go to you.
Thank you. So we've captured everything in minutes and actions, but I took key messages for us to take away today. Was that we welcomed having the board story on the working experience of a citizen with lived experience of bipolar and psychosis, and also on receiving the update on the Get Written Work we might take and the Connect to Work programme. We welcomed opportunities, but also looking at the complexities around this work and the need for a joined up approach. And the ICB have asked the ICB to take that forward. And we also considered our role, the role of the public sector as an anchor institution around this work. We noted the national context, especially around NHS England leadership changes, 25-26 planning, and also the amended government mandate for the NHS. In relation to performance, we noted the challenges mostly around whole-time equivalent reduction, challenges facing community pharmacy services, this around the Oliver McGowan training, and the need for further consideration around cyber risk at a system level. We reiterated the importance of remaining citizen and community focused rather than being overly focused on process and targets. We approved the delegation arrangements, the ICB to take on delegated responsibility for 25-26 specialised services, along with approving the delegation and collaboration agreements associated with that.
The only other thing I've got is around the replication of this through the committees, that we were going to do some work just to make that work smoother. Anything else? Okay. So by resolution then, I will give us the date and time of the next meeting and then conclude this meeting in public. So the next meeting will be held on Thursday, the 8th of May at 10:15, and it will be in the committee room 1 at County Hall, Polliston Park, Dorchester, down the road from here. So please remember that if you don't remember anything else from today. That brings by resolution the meeting in public to a close. So if I could ask all members of the public to